frogs. They're pretty cool, except when they're not. But I'd say I have a fairly good opinion of frogs. I mean, they're green, they're amphibious, sometimes they make some pretty funny noises. But you know what I don't have a very good opinion of? Capitalism. Brothers, sisters, and all good siblings of the world, for too long we have been oppressed by a cruel and uncaring system. We've been manipulated, humiliated, and neglected by those in charge. Friends, we must stand up for what is just. We have to address the wrongs of this world. And the biggest current wrong of this world is, why is Cave Story Plus $15 on Steam? I don't have that much money to spend on games like that. Why can't it be like $5 or something?
Wait, don't you know that Cave Story has always been free? Aren't you gonna talk about what happened to Pixel and Nicalis?
Oh, that. Well, I don't really care too much about that.
But what about fighting for the oppressed? What about taking down the tyrannical ruling class? Whatever happened to that?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about standing up for the most oppressed people on Earth.
And who is that exactly?
Isn't it obvious? Gamers! And that's the day I was rode out of Moscow on a rail. But yeah, it's pretty messed up what happened to Pixel and Cave Story. I mean, is a man not entitled to the mamiga on his brow? However, he did create another game, one that kind of flew relatively under the radar, but nonetheless is really fun and definitely full of his unique style. A game that just so happens to have a frog as its starring lead character. And that game is Kero Blaster. Kero Blaster is a 2014 action platformer by Daisuke Pixel Amaya, the same creator as the game Cave Story. In it, you play as a frog janitor who works for a teleportation company, C&F, that has to clean up mysterious black creatures that keep showing up around the company's teleporters. While Kero Blaster is a lot like Cave Story in its core mechanics and pixel art aesthetic, it's a much smaller scale game compared to the big epic nature of its predecessor. However, this doesn't detract from the experience in the slightest. I guess if you were to compare it to anything, Cave Story would be a full-course meal, while Kero Blaster is a nice coffee break. Short, but still a thoroughly enjoyable, if at times challenging, experience. Okay. Just one more. Consarnet! In fact, with the new modes added to Kero Blaster, the post-game levels are quite difficult, just like the end of Cave Story. I won't be focusing on those game modes because I'm too much of a weenie to beat them, but I'll focus on the main game's aesthetics, mechanics, and other things I find appealing. For instance, I really like the music in Kero Blaster. Pixel continues to demonstrate again and again that he's a really great musician. While not as sweeping and atmospheric as some of his other works, Kero Blaster's soundtrack is still quite good. You can find the full soundtrack, Kero Rhythm, on Steam, but here are a few of my favorite tracks from the game. In addition to a great soundtrack, Kero Blaster has some really great pixel art and set pieces. While not as detailed as some of Pixel's previous works, Kero Blaster has some pretty good pixel art. Everything's so nice and readable and understandable, which I can't really say the same for Cave Story. Admittedly, I thought Quote had a really big nose when I was playing the original game. The set pieces are really lovely too. I love the big open fields, the swamps, the factories, the office buildings that you visit throughout the game. They really lend a different kind of atmosphere to them. Finally, Kero Blaster is just really fun to control. You start off with fairly limited mobility and firepower, but as the game progresses, you can jump around like, well, a frog with great ease and destroy virtually anything. I really like the choice of shooting forwards while moving backwards. It makes concentrating fire on bosses and other enemies while dodging attacks really easy. And when an enemy charges at you, you have to fire at them relatively quickly. So this new mobility is definitely a plus for this game. While there are some aspects I don't really like too much, I would say that on the whole, Kero Blaster is fun, action-filled, albeit kind of a short experience that any avid fan of games like Mega Man or Cave Story can pick up and get a lot of enjoyment out of. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure you will too. Now, time to teleport out. Wait, what?